Welcome to the Hinsdale Local Podcast, where we explore the journeys and stories of entrepreneurs and their businesses here in Hinsdale, Illinois. I'm your host, Brent, and today I'm joined by Dr. Carrie Thangamani, founder and owner of CHT Orthodontics in Hinsdale. Welcome to the show, Carrie.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah. Well, dear listeners, if you spend any time driving around Hinsdale, you'll know CHT Ortho. It's in Grant Square, and you can actually easily look into the offices from Chicago Avenue right before you get to Fuller's Car Wash. And I know this because I used to have offices right across the street from where you are. Oh. And I remember when you moved in, and I loved how bright and how open it was, and I could just see people in your office, like just things were just buzzing around, and It was really cool because when I think about, probably most of us when we think about a doctor's offices, we think about 10 by 10 rooms, right. 3 walls, very closed in, and I just had a hard time. I was like, wow, I can't believe this is an orthodontic office. So I would just love to, as we just kind of kick off our conversation, walk us through the design and what you were thinking, because I think it is just completely opposite of what we think of what a doctor's office is
absolutely. So we moved. So initially, my initial office was in another location. It was up on Lincoln Street, 111 South Lincoln to be specific. I'm on the 3rd floor of a red brick building there, kind of sandwiched between the fruit store and the U.S. Bank building.
Yeah.
So that was my original office on the 3rd floor of that particular space.
All the way up there?
Yeah. And I purchased the practice back in 2011. It was a smaller practice at that time, and I purchased it from a retiring female orthodontist who was wonderful. And we just continued to, basically the practice kind of grew little by little, and then we got to the point where we outgrew the space. And so I knew I needed to move, and I needed to get into a better, different space. But it was really important for me to stay close to the downtown area, close to the middle school, and just be still in a walkable area, because a lot of my patients, especially the middle school kids or that high school kind of time frame, are either dropped off when mom's running 17 different errands, or they walk there or they bike there. I mean, there's lots of kids that come to the office on foot. Oh. So I needed to find a location that was close to town. And then number 2, I really wanted, just like you said, light, bright, and airy. I was going to be spending probably more waking hours in this office than I was going to be spending in my own home. So I did not want anything that was dark and dreary. And it really wouldn't have reflected the culture and the nature of our practice anyway. And so I honestly found the space. I mean, obviously I come to Grant Square all the time, but I found the space just by driving by one day and said, hey, for lease. And there used to be a bank in the building.
Yes.
And there is Evergreen Bank is still here, but there used to be a different bank. I believe it was called Charter Bank. Okay. And so when I walked in, I had to kind of see past, the different office cubicles and whatnot, because it was kind of the office space of the bank. But I was really attracted to the long, tall windows that were going to let in a bunch of light, and that I envisioned my clinic being there. So it was the right amount of space, even though it was about twice what we already had in my old office. And it had so much potential. And I liked the fact that it was on the 1st floor. And it was in a great building, in a well-established building where people were coming to naturally between Kramer's, Walgreens, the deli that's there, Burhop Seafood. So it had a lot of foot traffic anyway. So I really was excited about that potential. And that was that. So then we were able to kind of make it work. So it's been a great move for us, for sure.
Now, did you work with a designer, or you're like, I know exactly what this is going to look like? Oh,
no, I worked with a designer. I can pick out what I like, but I cannot execute a plan in that regard. So it was a whole dental office design build team. So the first part was obviously laying out like the floor plan. And then they have basically like interior designers that are part of that team. We went through probably like 3 formulations of what we wanted to do, and because I honestly kind of just needed to see it before I knew that it was going to be right. And then we ended up falling upon something with more muted, light colors and tones. Kind of has more the feeling of maybe like a salon when you walk in. Not a lot of bright, bold colors, because that was just not going to be, that's not me. And in addition, I needed to be able to spend my entire, like I said, we spend a lot of time in here. So it's a very relaxing environment, very fresh, very clean, very soothing. So I think it appeals to the parents just as equally as it appeals to the kids, and probably more so to the parents too. So
wow. Well, I think you and the design team knocked it out of the park. It's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, we're proud of it, and we still love it. So it was a great color selection and a great, it was a great design for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So take me back a little bit. So I'm always curious on how one kind of falls into the vocation that they're in. Did you like to play with like teeth in childhood? Like you got little sets? Or I'm curious, how do you become an orthodontist? Right. And do you see anything from like your childhood that kind of played into that?
Yeah, 100%. It was from my own experience. So, I guess maybe I always liked going to the dentist. I mean, maybe I kind of remember back that young, but I started my own personal journey around the age of 12. So that was when I was probably going into 6th grade, I guess. Mm-hmm. And, I had a lot of stuff going on. I had impacted teeth. I had a really bad bite. I had a lot of crowding. So I was in braces for about 3.5, 4 years. I had a lot of issues. And I just really grew to love like the process of how my teeth were fixed, essentially. Not only the aesthetic outcome at the end, but I loved the process of it. And I was always very fascinated. I loved my orthodontist at the time. He was always happy. He was fun. He was, just seemed to love what he did as well. And I really do credit a lot of my passion and interest in going into the field to him. And ever since high school, kind of when my braces came off, I was like, I think that's what I want to do. I want to become an orthodontist. And
wow.
Very few people think they know what they want to do, and then it actually stick with it. So it honestly stuck with me all through, that high school, into college, and obviously I went to dental school really for the purpose of only becoming an orthodontist. That's what I was truly interested in.
Okay.
Yeah, so it stemmed really from my childhood years, and I still see Dr. Larson when I go home and visit my family. We have my parents are friendly with him, and I still see him out and about. And usually run into him over the summertime, and yeah, he's wonderful, and I give a lot of credit to him for doing what I do today.
Oh, I was going to ask, like, why not a dentist? But it sounds like that makes sense, because I was like, how does someone actually choose to become an orthodontist and not a dentist?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of it depends. I think orthodontics and dentistry are very different, very different kind of specialties. And my mindset was more wrapped around orthodontics and treatment planning and diagnosis. And I did like dentistry as well. Don't get me wrong, but I really orthodontics was my passion. So I'm very thankful, lucky, and grateful that I was able to pursue and actually execute what I always wanted to do.
Yeah. Wow. Well, okay. Yeah. So tell us then a little bit about your family, how you came to, and how you ended up coming to Hinsdale. Did you grow up in Hinsdale?
I did not. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York. So college brought me I went to the University of Notre Dame for college.
Okay.
Which is in South Bend, Indiana, 2 hours away from Chicago. And I ended up meeting my husband there, and we, started dating, I guess, summer before our senior year. He was pursuing medicine at the time. He was from Michigan. We both ended up luckily getting into the same med school / dental school at University of Michigan.
Wow. Talk about the luck of the draw.
Yeah, it was very lucky. And then we ended up, actually you have to match for your medical residency and or your orthodontic residency, but they're separate matches because one's dental and one's medical, and they happen at completely different times. So
can I interrupt you? Explain. I know what matching is because I have a bunch of doctor friends, but for someone who doesn't know, just explain briefly what matching is when it comes to med school.
Basically, if you're going to match into a residency program, whether it's dental or medical, you might apply to, let's just say, for example, 10 different residency programs. You might get interviews at 7 of those 10 programs, and then you would go to that interview, and then you would rank from 1 to 7, which is your preference. So number 1 being the best, number 2 being the second best. And so the schools all do the same. If they have 10 spots, they rank, and they've interviewed 40 people, they'll rank 1 through 40. And then it just some computer generated system comes together and they just match. It will always go to the person's preference. If you're on the top of the school's list and they're on the top of your list, it just makes a match. So we had to do 2 separate matches because you can't couples match since they were 2 different programs or 2 different, specialties, dentistry and medicine. But luckily, as fate would have it, we both were able to match into Chicago. We both tried for a city just because we thought that was our best odds. I was at UIC, which is the only dental school left in Chicago. And he was at, so Loyola and Northwestern both have closed their dental programs. And then he matched at Northwestern. So again, it was,
wow. Yeah.
Fate, luck, whatever you want to call it. And so we both moved to the city grew up in small towns. And fortunately, we just grew to love Chicago. Like there was a time when we thought we might stay in the city the whole time. But we loved the city. We had a lot of friends from college, a lot of friends from our training programs that were in the city. But I got pregnant, and I was like, I can't do city living with a baby. So then we wanted to make the migration out to the suburbs. And we both ended up finding practices in the western suburban area. We weren't necessarily aiming for one particular spot. We just wanted, both wanted to be relatively close to work, given the hours we knew we would work.
Yeah.
And this was after a couple of years of me just working while VJ was finishing his residency and fellowship. So it was a long journey, but one that was kind of a lot of planning, a lot of luck in there, some fate in there too. So I found my practice in Hinsdale with a retiring orthodontist. That was just lucky. I, heard of her and we both hit it off. And his was through a orthopedic group at the time that was in the western suburbs. So his main offices are about 15 minutes away, and mine are 3. So
man.
Where we live. So that's how we wound up in Hinsdale.
Oh, I tell you, I worked in Hinsdale for 15 years. My wife has a private practice. She's a mental health therapist for kids.
Oh,
we
wow.
opened that we opened up 4 years ago, and then we finally were able to move into Hinsdale like 3, and my goodness, that just makes being able to live so close is just so nice.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so now
100%.
Yeah. Okay, so now I got to ask you, because I was like, how do you buy a private practice? Like, how does that work? Yeah, do you buy the equipment? Do you buy domain?
You buy the physical. The space. Most medical offices are leased, but you buy whatever is in the practice, right? You buy the fixtures, the furniture, the equipment, the medical equipment, the X-ray machines, the instruments. So you really do buy all the physical stuff. You also buy the patient pool if you are, they might have anywhere from 100 to thousands of active patients, depending upon what you are, depending on what field you're in, I guess. So you buy that, and then you also buy what we call the goodwill of the practice. So that's the practice's reputation. It's its good name. It's the legacy of the practice. And that is you can kind of dollar amount many of the other things based upon the accounts receivable of the practice, the nature and the age of the physical things. But the goodwill is the intangible number that goes kind of associated with it. And usually you have, the buyer has their team of people that feel what the practice is worth, and then the seller has theirs, and then it's like buying a house, and then somehow you kind of meet in the middle. But yes, it was that's how, and usually find out about a practice usually through it's just usually through some type of orthodontic network. At least in the dental field, it works that way. So that's how I found the woman who I bought the practice from. Yeah.
That is so fascinating, because would you say that's how most orthodontic practices start, is through purchasing one? What kind of your experience? Because I imagine starting off from scratch. That's
a good question. I think that it's maybe half and half now. I don't know. I couldn't pull a stat. I'm just going based upon my own personal experience of those I know around me. I think that 50% of people either buy a practice or go into an existing practice. And that may mean, even nowadays, that might be greater. And for some people, that may mean fine into like a group practice, meaning that it has a dentist, an oral surgeon, and it like has all the specialties as part of that practice. And then they are just one of the specialists within that group practice. So I think that some people do that. And then there is a percentage that start on their own. And that could be because there isn't an existing orthodontist in the area that they want to be in, or simply there isn't a practice that they want to purchase, or there isn't availability of a practice to purchase in that area. Some areas are more saturated than others. So obviously to be smart in business, you probably want to go to where you think there is going to be patients to support the, the numbers that you are, or the numbers that you want to have. But yeah, and then there's a good number of people that just don't want to own anything and they just want to work, right? They want to associate, they want to be an employee, and they don't want to deal with having in a business. And there's, that's a great option as well. So a lot of, many dentists are kind of going that route, knowing that owning a business is not always the easiest thing. So there's a good number of people, especially young people that have a lot of debt burden, going the associate route and just taking some time and, getting a paycheck that they haven't otherwise gotten before, and then working to pay down loans with the high debt burden that they have. So there's variation. But yeah, kind of a gamut of things across the board.
Okay. That's really helpful. I was just really curious about that. I do a lot of support for like marketing for mental health. Yeah. And that's always in the back of my head because, not all mental health are created equally, right? And some people might be ready to, either they're struggling or they're ready to retire or something. I'm like, what would it be like to just buy a mental health practice and have, I don't know. That was just, so thanks for answering that question.
Yeah. Moderation. Yep.
So as a business that actually makes its money by people coming into the office, it's very similar to what mental health is. I'm curious, how did you have to pivot for those several months when everything was shutting down for your own practice?
It was insanely stressful, as it was for so many other people and so many business owners, just because we didn't know what was going to happen. Are we shutting down for a week? Are we shutting down for 5 weeks? Are we shutting down like for months and months and months? So, just with anybody, it was very, very, very stressful. We shut our doors, I believe it was like March 16th, which was, I feel like the whole world kind of shut down like during that week or the week after that. Obviously in dentistry, like because it's healthcare and we're dealing with people's mouths, like there was across the board, dental offices shut down kind of across the country, across the world, because we didn't know what our ability for, spreading was. What we did is, after the first 2 weeks of just trying to reschedule patients and try to figure out what was going on, we realized that this was going to be, we're in this for at least the next probably month or two. So we created some virtual platforms on our website and through our kind of communication portals. So most of our communication does happen digitally. We text with our patients. We do everything through like a digital system. So long story short is, anybody that was on the schedule with an appointment, we were able to reach out to them digitally, and we had them kind of take photos of themselves at home. It's like a smartphone. Yeah. And then I was able to do like progress virtual checks on them. And I spent a good portion of every day just like communicating with the patients that way, just to make sure that they were still on track. And obviously if someone had a significant emergency or they were in pain, I would go in and see them because that was considered emergent. So we really shifted a lot of our things digitally, and some of those things actually stayed. So a lot of our digital communications, they stayed, which was great. But we were closed for about a total of 11 weeks. Oh. So it was a while. We came back again sometime towards the end of May before Memorial Day, with a slow kind of, revamping systems and structures. But our biggest way to pivot was changing everything digitally. And I also want my patients to know that just because they couldn't come to the office, I hadn't disappeared. I was there. I was going through all this right with them. And the parents, I think, were really appreciative of the constant communication and, the knowledge that I was just there, if anything, checking in on them and checking up on them. So, that was our biggest thing, kind of pivoting more to digital.
Yeah. Just one of the things, pivoting to digital, let alone like have to rethink
right.
the cleaning, like just all the information a business owner is just taking in. Oh, and by the way, you have 2 like young kids, right? Like,
they were doing virtual school, and there was just my husband. He was down too in medicine, and so we essentially were just all around our dining room table. Someone was at each side, and on their computers and zooming in for different things, and everything was just, that was our life for 2.5 months, just like everybody else. So it was quite a change, that is for sure.
And I imagine things have picked up for you.
Oh yeah. We went to great lengths just to kind of change how we did a couple things in the office. Luckily, we are socially distanced as it is, like the chairs are socially distanced. We did, our cleaning procedures are over the top. We have privacy screens now between the different chairs. It really is, everybody should feel 100% safe being in this office. There are no, even across the dentistry in general, there's just no documented cases of any spread within a dental office. It just hasn't happened because we are masked, we're shielded, and we're things are just cleaned profusely, constantly. It's I feel safer in my office than anywhere. So it's similar.
It's similar with schools. I don't believe there has been a case where a teacher has gotten COVID from a student.
Correct.
Like there hasn't been any across like the country. So
correct. It doesn't. The spread isn't happening then. Anybody that's contracting seems to be, obviously it's happening outside of the outside of the school space, and nothing's happening within the dental office, which is reassuring.
Yeah. I mean, my heart during that time, I just remember my heart was going out to all these small business owners, like shutting down. I was just like, this is, so all my clients pretty much across the board are completely filled up with mental health cases.
I cannot even imagine.
And my wife's practice they're almost like completely full. Like we can't even hire fast enough. Yeah. It's just and it seems like marriages and things were hitting a little bit more early in individual counseling, and now it seems like kids are just starting to break. Like they were able to hold on for so long, and I feel like it's just really to a breaking point for them. So my heart just like breaks for this.
100%. And I think that kids are also, families are stressed, and that weighs in on the kids, and you're just like, kids are resilient up to a certain point.
Yeah.
And kids truly need socialization. It's not just for fun. They need that for character development. They need that for personal strength and development as well. And I think that because that's been broken for so long, or so separated and disparate, like it's just something that really needs to come to the forefront. And that's where our return to normalcy is hopefully in the near future, right? Not only for the economic situation across the country, but really for the health of our kids and our, parents and our friends, and kids specifically. It's been a rough year, 100%.
Yeah. Ma'am.
Yeah.
Well, I know you got to get back to seeing some patients. I'm curious. So I asked this question to my guests on the Hinsdale Local Podcast. Like, so let's just say there's a student from Hinsdale Central that's interested in becoming an orthodontist. What would you tell them now? I mean, you talked a lot of things. We talked about, is there matching? There's also debt that you talked about, student debt. I mean, what would you tell them to what would be the mindset? What should they be thinking about as they kind of move towards that trajectory?
So I would say a couple of things. Number one, as early as you can, try to get into different, call around and ask various dental specialists, like, hey, can I come just observe and watch for a couple hours or watch for half of a day, and really understand, so you get a better understanding of what a typical day is like, a day in the life of, is our, dental specialist. But I think that really not only gives them a good idea of what a day is like, to make sure, hey, this still is really what I want to do, but it also to admissions team and the admission staff at these various dental schools and colleges, you're showing that you're expressing interest in the profession early on. So whatever kind of observations you can do in high school, absolutely. I also, without a doubt, and this has not changed, it's a very long journey. So you're doing 4 years of college, 4 years of dental school, 3 years of orthodontic residency after that. So it's a lot of school. I went straight through, so there was no break, and no break in education. And it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of studying. It's a lot of late nights. It's a lot of physical hours spent doing didactic work as well as clinical work. So you gotta love it. You have to really truly engage and love the interaction, not only with what you're learning, but also with patient care, because you can be a great orthodontist, but you also have to be very good with people too. So I would say that knowing what they're getting into from a length of educational perspective, and also get your feet wet. If you're in college and you're in a college and you can spend some time at the local dental school, do it. Just do whatever you can to get that experience. If you can do extra research, that if you're in college, if you can do any research that is science, science inclined when you're in dental school, and if you're interested in orthodontics, do get involved with research that is kind of on the orthodontic side of things. So try to look for all the extra stuff just to show extra interest and extra dedication to your future career. So those are kind of the initial things I would say.
Got it. That's so helpful. And I'm just out of curious, like when we're thinking school loans, is this typical for like what a doctor would have? I'm like $200,000 in school loans comes to mind. I don't know why that is, but like, are you looking at heavy school loans for these types of things?
It depends upon if you're going private. Most private schools are probably more than that per year. So more than $60,000 a year, I think now. So 60 times 4. Depending if you get any financial aid with that obviously hopefully can kick in. And so, there's college, then you've got 4 years of dental school, and the dental school is the private residency now. Unfortunately, very few orthodontic residencies are hospital-based. So again, you're paying for residency as well in almost all situations, unless it's affiliated with the hospital, because if it's affiliated with a hospital, then you get some type of medical grant there. So again, you've got to accumulate another, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. So I don't know. That's a lot of money times 7 years of education.
Just dollar signs across the board.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it depends upon what school you go to, but if anything private, you're looking at hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars at the end of all of it.
So your advice is right on. Like, definitely observe, try to figure out an internship, maybe just an observation internship.
Right.
In exchange for observation, can I wash some of the utensils or something?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Because you really want to make sure you're in it before you.
Yeah, in it to win it for sure.
In it to win it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what I do. I feel extraordinarily lucky that I have the opportunity to not only do what I do scientifically, and it's my passion, but also I've just been given such a privilege to meet so many people and engage with my patients, whether they're adult or kid. I meet the families, we see them out and about in town. So it's a wonderful, wonderful profession. And I feel, lucky to be part of it. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for joining me on the podcast. Where can people find more about you and your private practice? Where can they go?
So I think the first, we have our website is a major, source of information. That's www.chtortho.com. And then we also do have some social media platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we kind of update those and, show the fun side of what we do on a fairly regular basis. So you could, like us or message us through there. Those are also easy platforms, but website and then the social media. And then our number, of course, is plastered everywhere on that website, so you can always call us. And if you're interested in scheduling a consultation, all of our initial consultations are complimentary. So come in and find what we're all about and what we can do for you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, folks, thanks for listening in. If you found the conversation useful, subscribe to the podcast, share it with a friend, and join me again next time for the Hinsdale Local Podcast.